I'm just blown away by the huge heart and courage of all of our storytellers. Can we have a round of applause for everyone? Throughout the mess of life and motherhood, your mom is your window to the world, no matter how old you are. Moms are often called to protect us from villains, even as they battle their own. With more on that topic is Cheryl Cleary with Monsters in My Head.
Mama. Her voice was just a whisper, followed by a short pause. Mama. Mama, she eagerly pleaded, growing increasingly frustrated and desperate for a response. It was dark. 2 a.m. dark. I lifted my head just high enough to make out a 3-foot-tall shadow standing at the foot of my bed. The small trace of light coming in from the kitchen revealed she had one hand clinging tightly to her blankie and the other gripping a nearly empty sippy cup. I sunk my head back into the pillow, hoping to go unnoticed. Silence. Phew. She must have given up, I thought. Maybe she went back to bed. Well, that was easy. Mama! She yelled, this time demanding she be heard. Damn it! So much for the power of positive thinking, I groaned. What, Hannah, what? I yelled as I bolted upright. My anger was immediately replaced with remorse for my unsympathetic reply. My sleep deprivation combined with being 6 months pregnant had my patience at an all-time low. She had been making a habit out of getting up all hours of the night, bringing my exhaustion to minuscule levels of understanding. Mama, there's monsters. Her pleading was once again back to an insecure whisper. The tremble in her voice revealed to me that these monsters were, indeed, very real to her. There's no monsters, Hannah. Now go back to sleep, I assured her, and hoped she would miraculously morph into an obedient toddler overnight. I slumped my head back into the pillow in a desperate pursuit to get more sleep, knowing full well my attempt would result in nothing more than abandoned efforts. They're in my room, she persisted. Come lay with me. I moaned. I tried, I thought to myself as I slithered to the end of the bed and secured my feet onto the floor. I suppose I can sleep when I'm dead. The sleep lifted from my eyes, and as I struggled to regain focus, I could see her hair was completely disheveled, and her head was hung low in utter defeat. As she stepped into the light, I could see the apparent dread in her face. I walked myself a minute in her shoes. I thought about these fictitious creatures and how terrifying they must be to her, a little person who feels so helpless and unnoticed. When did they become so real to her? Thanks, Monsters, Inc., I muttered to myself. And I thought you guys were supposed to be the good ones. I reluctantly dragged myself out of bed, and with my hands on my shoulders to guide her, I directed her back to her room. I began to explain to her that the monsters she saw weren't actually there. They weren't real. You must have had a bad dream, sweetheart, I reassured her. No, Mama, she wasn't convinced. See? I confirmed as we entered her room. No monsters. I flipped on the light switch just long enough for her to assess the situation, but as I walked her closer to her bed, I could still feel the hesitation in her steps. I tucked her back in and I watched as her cautious eyes darted back and forth across the room. That desperate last-minute attempt at seeking out those flesh-eating creatures that had made themselves comfortable in her room proved to be a success. There! She confidently pointed to the corner of the room next to her pink dollhouse. Where? I questioned. I saw nothing. Over there, Mama, she affirmed, the fear in her voice turning quickly to content for proving me wrong. Honey, there's nothing there. I laughed to myself as I scanned the blob on the wall that had so easily deceived her. It's just a shadow. She stared a little longer at the corner of the room as the wheels of contemplation spun. I could see her little mind turning in disbelief at the idea that there really wasn't actually anything there. Finally at peace with my convincing, I felt the tension lift as she nestled contently back into bed. She pulled the covers up over her chest and clung tightly to an overloved teddy bear. I comforted her by reading her favorite of Santa's snow globe and watched as her eyes fell heavy and a blanket of security had her falling fast asleep. I breathed a sigh of relief and staggered back to bed, grateful the ordeal never escalated into an all-night excursion of Frozen and 3 a.m. popcorn. I never did have the heart to tell my daughter that monsters actually do exist. That, for me, they really are real. They might not be the obvious ones you encounter in a storybook with sharp teeth and slanted eyes. They don't have slimy skin or pointy horns, and you won't find them lurking under your bed or hiding in your closet. But they do, in fact, exist. They hide in that moment of uncertainty that tells me I can't when I know I can. They are that whisper of self-doubt that tells me I'm not strong enough or smart enough and that everyone else can do it better. They exist in that gentle temptation that, throughout high school, convinced me courage was sold in glass bottles and confidence could be found in rolled-up nicotine. They were that voice inside that told me I was nobody unless I was part of the cool crowd or after-school sports teams. They hid in those lies that told me fitting in was just as good as true belonging, and that impressing others was so much more important than staying true to myself. And in my mid-20s, those same voices would nearly kill me, as they eventually convinced me that pain could be healed through glassine bags and dirty syringes. They deceived me into thinking all I ever needed could be found downtown on any street corner, and that every fear I've ever felt and every tear I've ever cried could all be fixed with one hit of deceptive brown powder. They would persuade me to give up hope time and time again, assuring me it was too late for me, that even God himself had given up on me. They debilitated me with fear through relentless moments of unresolved guilt and resurfacing shame. They reiterated my past through anxiety of public restrooms, filled with flashbacks of overused tourniquets and silver mixing caps. They shouted at me through nightmares of trap houses occupied by lost souls selling lies to kids, and through lonely panhandlers with cardboard signs and empty eyes. And on January 7th, 2017, when I gave birth to my little girl, those voices would try to persuade me that even a mother's love could never be enough to break the chains that bound me. They had me so convinced my story would end with a needle in my arm and a paramedic at my side that I couldn't possibly be strong enough to win the fight or beat the statistics. But those voices were wrong, you see. As it turns out, her love was enough for me, and God had heard me. She was my answer to all those desperate pleas I was certain had gone unheard. She was my undeniable proof of God's endless grace. As it was through her, I found forgiveness can come in even the smallest of packages. It was through her I found I could rewrite my script, have my storybook ending. As she was the one that taught me healing doesn't come by running from pain, but by walking through it. That really living is all about the process and less about the destination. It was her that taught me success isn't measured by fancy cars or corporate ladders, but by inner peace and giving back. That mere existence of life could never be enough, as it's through purpose we find the person we were meant to be. It's through purpose that our life makes perfect sense. And in the grips of her tiny hand, I found that just a sliver of hope can outweigh even the tightest constraints of despair. I found reassurance in moments of doubt and courage in moments of weakness. I found that a single mustard seed of faith can be enough to move the tallest mountains, and that fear is most often a liar, and life really does get better. It was her who who taught me sobriety can be so much more heartbreakingly beautiful than I could ever have possibly imagined. And in those days of struggle, when I hear her laugh or see her smile, my problems become small. Those voices become a whisper, and all doubt fades away. And for a moment, I wonder if maybe monsters really aren't real.